Hey there, welcome back to Into the Spotlight with Kelly Sinkowski. We're continuing this series on Virginia's redistricting referendum. By April 21st, Virginia's voters will decide whether voting districts should be redrawn. I invited local officials, elected delegates, and our state senators to all participate in this conversation, and I invited Republicans and Democrats. I'm really happy to welcome my guest today, which is Senator Tara Durant, the senator for the 27th District. Tara, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for hosting this series. It's very important.
Well, so first, can you tell us a little bit about your service for Virginia, your background?
Yeah, well, I always say we're very much a typical Stafford family, Marine Corps family. My husband served 31 years, so that's how we end up settling this area. It's where we raised our three kids. I was a former teacher. I taught at Holy Cross Academy and then was elected to the House of Delegates. And then the Senate. So I just finished my fifth term in the General Assembly. So it's been an absolute honor.
You are a Republican, right?
I am a Republican, yes.
Okay. I'm going to take a second to share my screen so that our viewers
Okay.
can see what we're talking about with this ballot that's being voted on. Let's get
Mm-hmm.
here. There we go. So the question on the ballot is, should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming election while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all future redistricting after the 2030 census? So, Tara, let's start. What is a fair map?
A fair map is not that language. That's certainly that's right out of the gate. There's a lot of problems with that phrasing and the question. I think a fair map is it's a Republican ideal that reflects the organic communities of interest that we've heard a lot of people talk about. So, when Virginians overwhelmingly ratified in 2020, you've heard it described as a nonpartisan. I think it's more accurate to say it's a bipartisan commission that is really articulating the intentions of the founding fathers, that legislatures must be a mirror of the people. James Madison said that the House was an immediate reflection of and a connection with the people. So a fair map, therefore, it's got to have those organic boundaries, those communities of interest, and that ensures that those that are being represented are getting a true representation of that Republican ideal, where the voters, they alone are the architects of their representation.
So then, as a legislator, how do you view your responsibility when it comes to the question of drawing districts?
How I represent my district.
Mhm.
Well, when I was elected to the Senate, we had the redistricting that came out right in between, right after I was elected from the House. And that was the central question, was communities of interest, and they were looking for um, the map lines to be contiguous. So I saw, eventually, of course, I saw the Senate district, and that was, I thought they did actually pretty good job in terms of I represent pretty much the entire county of Stafford, except for a section in the north. I have the city of Fredericksburg and portions of Spotsylvania County, and that reflects exactly my relationship in this community. Long before I became a legislator, those are kind of those tentacles in the community that I've always had, and I think a lot of people would agree that it was a true representation of they feel like the relationships they have.
Now, there's a lot of conversation about what's been happening nationally, where other states have chosen to redistrict for their
Mhm.
states. So I guess the question is this all in response to what's happening in other states? And is it Virginia's responsibility to offset what other states are doing?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. That's one that we've heard a lot about, right away. I bet Texas. And I think Virginia's historical role has never been to mimic the dysfunctions of our neighbors. We provide the blueprint for this nation. To suggest that we need to counteract partisan gerrymandering elsewhere is that classic race to the bottom. And that betrays our role as the mother of the states, if you will. I think we have to recognize the subjects of this referendum. It's a reactionary reflex to national anxieties that you just alluded to, and I think that really is going down a dangerous road when you are using uh, rejecting national policies. If you don't like who's in office in a majority, that you may result to a proxy of redrawing in lines and gerrymandering them. That's that's improper way to air your grievances. That's appropriate for the ballot box. Not to go after the fundamental architecture and plumbing of our democracy. We don't preserve a republic by incinerating its principles, and we have to ensure that our districts remain a stable form of the great debate of our time instead of a battlefield for proxy wars over federal policies.
Well, one of the things that people have mentioned is the idea that whatever party is in control will favor gerrymandering or redrawing districts if it benefits their own party. How would you respond to that?
I think that's exactly why we had the referendum in 2020, and that had strong bipartisan support. You've seen in some of the advertisements quotes from our current leaders that are in the majority right now. The governor spoke about this. The chair of Senate Finance spoke strongly in support of it. We even have former President Obama that has spoken out against gerrymandering for these very reasons. So there is a strong sentiment that this is, we've seen the historical precedents of what happens, and it's greatly concerning, not just for Virginia, but how we are going to go after the very fabric of how our republic has been structured.
So if there's one thing that you want voters to understand about this proposal before they go vote, what would you like to leave them with?
Yeah, well, that goes back to when at the very beginning, when we talked about this euphemistic labeling of fairness and recognizing it for what it is. This is a power grab, plain and simple. It's an attempt to disenfranchise voters, individuals, and a good example of this is I had a friend of mine that reached out, and she is, she's always votes. She's always reaching out and connecting with me. And she said, Tara, what are we doing with this? I've gotten a couple of mailers and they're very confusing. I think that's intentional by design, by saying restoring fairness. That's implying that as currently drawn, those districts are not fair, and that's never been raised before. Look, this commission is the people's creation. It is their tool to ensure that politicians answer to them rather than being sorted by them. No one wants to have the tyranny of the majority to draw lines, and that was exactly how the voters answered pretty overwhelmingly. So do not be misled by the rhetoric and the message and the phrasing of this. If you break down that system today to send a message to whoever you don't like, you're going to find yourself powerful. I'm concerned in the future when you send a message to the next one. So this is incredibly important to restore and protect the integrity of the Commonwealth and the sanctity of your vote. And I strongly encourage everyone that you must vote no.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to chat with me.
Yeah, of course.
All of our viewers, I want to remind you, this is part of a series we heard from both sides of the aisle from a number of different local leaders. Please make sure you take your time and do your research before you vote. April 21st is the last day to vote. Thank you so much for your time, Tara, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.